Let's talk about The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise and Russell Crowe. Now, there's a few things I'd like to talk about before I get into this film itself. For one, I'm not a huge fan of, the classic Universal monster movies. Now, I have not given them their fair chance. I have seen all of the first entries of the classics. And I saw them a long time ago. I was probably at an age where I wouldn't have appreciated them as much. I've just rewatched Dracula pretty recently, and I did find myself a tad bored. I totally understand why they're classics, and I totally understand why they're revered. So I'm not opposed to going them. So I actually went and bought the whole, 30 movie set with every single one of these damn things. All the Dracula sequels, all the Frankensteins, the Mummies, the Creature from the Black Lagoons, all of it. I will eventually knock all of these out and review them here on the channel. I do look forward to doing that. So my Universal monster film knowledge isn't all that great. So there may have been things in this movie that were referencing or cool little throwbacks or whatnot. I didn't catch any of them. So I am pretty familiar with the Brendan Fraser ones. I really enjoyed the first two of those. I just, back in the late 90s and the early 2000s when those were coming out, oh man, I just had such a blast with those. Those were so much fun. But as much as I enjoyed the Mummy movies with Brendan Fraser and whatnot, the real, classic monster movies, the Frankensteins, the Draculas, the Mummies, that, we gotta talk about Hammer. Hammer horror films, Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Terrence Fisher, all those guys. Fuck yeah, man. Now that I can get behind. I love those. I love all 7 Draculas, all 8 Frankensteins, all 4 Mummies. Like, that's, and then a bunch of other Hammer stuff, like the Quatermass stuff and, whatnot. So, but just talking about these, which had, kind of been remakes of the classics here, I love those. I mean, Bride of Dracula, I'm such a big fan of that one. Brides of Dracula, should I say. You'll love that movie. And then, even like the later ones, like Kung Fu stuff with the Golden Curse of the Golden Vampire or whatever. Oh man, those are such a blast to watch. I wish that Hammer, would, whoever has the rights to those, I'm sure there's a lot of distribution issues, so that's probably why it hasn't happened. But oh man, please, Hammer or whoever's in charge of that shit, get together and make all of us a box set of, just at least the Draculas, the Frankensteins, and the Mummies. You can do them in 3 different sets if you want. All together would be fantastic. Oh man, please. Now, that's classic monster movies to me. I'm really a huge fan of the, grave robber, adventure films, Tomb Raider. My favorite game series of all time is Uncharted, like 10 times over. I just adore that series. Any kind of the films like that, the Mummies with Brendan Fraser. And I'm not a person who attaches myself to actors' personal lives, like whatever people do in their personal life, unless it's like, raping kids or something, something fucking crazy. If it's just like they're into some weird fucking religion or they are weird, I don't care about that kind of shit. You either make good movies, you're a good actor, or you're not. So with the whole Tom Cruise thing, I know a lot of people, like, when you mention Tom Cruise, anytime I bring him up around, most people are like, oh, Tom Cruise. I mean, his movies still make hundreds of millions of dollars, so I don't know. These people are probably hypocrites and go see everything he sees. But I've never disliked a Tom Cruise movie, honestly, and I've seen every single movie he's made except for Far and Away is, I think, the only one I have yet to see. So this is a movie that, was trying to yet again start this dark universe. The Dracula Untold movie with Luke Evans was the first attempt at that, and pretty much everybody hated it. And I went into that movie with low expectations because everyone hated it. I'm a big Luke Evans fan, so I did have that going for it. But I actually fully enjoyed that movie. I didn't understand why everyone hated it so much. Was it great? No, but I had a totally fine time with it. I was like, yeah, this is fun. This got some good action sequences, this and that. And then I heard this one getting blasted, and I was like, oh, here we go again. I've never disliked a Tom Cruise film. This is kind of set to my tastes anyways. I got the adventure type film. It's got some horror elements to it. So I was just kind of going into this, and it's been a while since it's been out. It's finally on Blu-ray now is when I got to catch it. I just honestly didn't have the time when it came out. So yeah, I was really looking forward to this, but I did see a couple red flags besides. Usually critiques don't do anything for me. I'm usually in the minority in a lot of my opinions anyways. So when people are like, oh, I hated it, or critics all bash it, I'm like, that doesn't mean shit to me. But some red flags I saw when I was looking this up was that, for one, the director had never done a bigger budget film before, which isn't always that's not always a bad thing by any means. I mean, shit, you've had lots of people doing it recently, and having success with it. I mean, Rian Johnson really hasn't done anything bigger budget, and The Last Jedi looks fucking amazing as of yet. But I don't know, something about that was kind of like, oh, really? You got him to do it? Why don't you get Christopher McQuarrie or these other guys that you've been working with recently? And then I saw a big one, which was this film had 6 writers. And that's never a good sign. That is rewrites, that's passing here, that's passing there. People are taking scripts and they're just changing them. And whenever I see that many writers on a film, I know usually that's not a good thing. Usually writer 2, 3 max. When you see anything over that, it's like, ooh, this is getting rough. How many rewrites did this thing go under? Okay, let's get into the film itself. I am kind of I shouldn't say shocked, but I am very surprised to say that I did not care for this movie. I'm actually going to go along with everyone else and say that this movie was very lackluster. I'm sure if I was to go on the internet and really read reviews, it'd be like, worst movie I ever saw in my whole life. And it's like, I love people like that. It seems like every movie anyone's ever seen online is the worst movie ever made. If it's not, the best movie they've ever seen. That's the only two things. So yeah, let's get into the things I like, which is very, very, very little. I mean, there's technical aspects that I could praise, or not even praise, but give credit to. But it's like, with a film like this, it has such a high budget that you're like, well, of course, it's going to look good. It better. Although, that being said, there's a lot of scenes where it's very poorly lit. And I know it's supposed to be the dark universe and it's supposed to be horror elements to it, but there's scenes, and I got this on Blu-ray. I went and I spent the extra 50 cents at Redbox, just so that, I could see the full experience. A big budget movie like this, I wanted a Blu-ray of it. And there's scenes where they're running from her in the ambulance. And it was really so dark that I could barely fucking tell what was going on. And I was kind of like, wow, this is, I don't know. Maybe I should turn the brightness on my TV up. So anyway, getting into the positives, I like the plane crash. Now, unfortunately, this positive comes with one of my negatives. They showed so much of this movie in the trailer. All of the cool action sequences, which there was very few, were in this trailer. And I knew everything that was going to happen. Russell Crowe plays Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in this movie, and it's so underwhelming. It's not used well at all. It kind of feels shoehorned in, why is Dr. Jekyll in this? Outside of, let's make this a connected universe. It's kind of okay, he's there. And then, the fact that I'm trying to be positive, shit. And literally, I have 2 things written down here in my positives. I had one, but I crossed it out because it just ended up not really getting me. But yeah, the plane crash looked cool. I know that they did this. They do the vomit comet where they do the no gravity They actually did this for this movie. They went in the plane and they just went and they did it like a shit ton of times. And I always appreciate that because that's a seriously fucking crazy stunt for actors to be doing, for anybody to be doing, but especially millionaire type actors like Tom Cruise, who's a nutcase and does all of his own stunts on all of his movies. He's going to get himself killed. But it looked cool. I mean, I feel like they could have done it with wires and it would have looked exactly the same. But it's Tom Cruise. He's a wild man. He wants to do it for real just because he wants to do it. I mean, he's just fucking nuts. And I'm not saying that as a dig. He's just a wild man. You know, positive or negative, it doesn't matter. And then this is such a pathetic positive here, but there's a scene where Dr. Jekyll and him are fighting, and Dr. Jekyll actually grabs him under the rib, and you see him like put his fingers under the rib, because that is a gnarly move to do to somebody, and you never see it in movies. And I was like, oh man, they're going for that. That's awesome. Yeah, as I said, that was a pathetic positive, but shit, man, this movie doesn't have a lot. Now, I'm going to get straight into my negatives here, and one of my biggest negatives is not only is the storyline just lackluster, I didn't give a shit about anything going on. I didn't care. And as I said, I am the target audience for this. I like Tom Cruise. I don't have any problem with him as an actor. I've always enjoyed his movies. I really like these like action adventure, grave robber, Tomb Raider fucking type films. So this was like perfect for me, and I couldn't care less. Like there was no attention to anything. I didn't feel like anything was explored. I kept sitting there like, what's happening? Like, who cares about this? It's all about a dagger and her maybe eventually becoming powerful by, like, this is all, we don't ever see anything happening. The action sequences are very blah. Like, I just was kind of like, I felt no tension during them. I felt, no excitement. I didn't think there was anything unique to them. I wasn't like, oh, I haven't seen that before, or that was unique, or that was cool, or nothing. I was just kind of like, they're running. Okay, there's cars. Like, seriously. And that's fucking bullshit. On a film like this, with this much money, and these kinds of people attached to it, there should be better shit going on here. But I was trying to say, the CGI in general in this movie is not good. And I'm not opposed to CGI. I'm one of the people who absolutely adored the Hobbit trilogy, and everyone was just bashing it for its stupid CGI. It was a CGI mess, and they ruined the books and this and that, and that's a debate for a different time. But CGI I don't care a shit. Like, if it's entertaining and it's fun and it's cool, and I'm all about it. But in this, it was just very, jarring. Like, every time there was CGI on the screen, it was like, that's CGI. And it took you out of it. It didn't feel real at all. Almost any of it. And especially the Chris character, played by Jake Johnson. Why they didn't do his face in makeup, and they decided to do it really mostly in CGI. I think there's some makeup on him. It's like CGI enhancements, like his eye and some of his face. But there's scenes where it's like, as I said, jarring. It's like shocking. Like, why does that look so fucking terrible? Like, because Chris's character becomes like the American Werewolf in London type of thing, where his friend is in the dead zone, basically a dead world, and he's able to see him as like a walking dead. And you're talking about a 1982 fucking monster movie with 1/1,000,000th of a budget. That guy in the movie looked amazing. And in this movie, he looks fucking awful. And I'm just like, why? Why didn't you do that in makeup? Like, that's just laziness. Like, getting back to the Hobbit thing I was talking about earlier, like, I get why you have 100,000 CGI orcs. You're not going to go out and fucking build 100,000 orcs and make them fight in a field, and you're not going to build huge fucking buildings when you can do it. Like, I get that. That makes sense. That's grand scale stuff. But a fucking face with just like gray makeup and a dead eye, you couldn't put a contact in and got someone to do his makeup? Like, that's fucking pretty pathetic. The comedy in this is flat. Like, that was surprising as well. I was kind of just sitting there like, there's like one joke, and it's like about Tom Cruise's inability to please this girl. That was like the only joke where I was like, that was cute. But outside of that, I mean, I was just kind of like, they were all forced jokes. None of the timing was in sync. Like, even if the joke could have been funny, the way that they, put it together in the editing, probably, or the directing, whatever aspect of it was off, the timing was off. And some of the jokes were just not good in general. But even jokes that I said I could have worked, they just didn't flow to make that punchline hit. And I was very surprised by that. Yet again, this whole like double iris thing that the Mummy has, like, I get it's a cool looking effect for like a minute, but it just, like, she has it throughout the film and it just looks stupid after a while. I don't know why. And then later in the movie, somebody else has it happen, and it's just like, is this so they can, like, is there any purpose to this? Like, I mean, I get it. It's a look, but that's supposed to look cool. But does it have any actual, like, in-story reason? For example, like, can they see in 4D? I don't know. That kind of got enough. And then the Mummy itself. Like, I don't feel like the Mummy's story itself. This movie's called The Mummy. She's the titular character. And it's like, why is she not being fleshed out more? I mean, she didn't have any flesh, so I'm very surprised by this film. I really am. I'm surprised at how not good this movie is. Is it awful? No, it's not awful, but it's not good. And last thing I want to add here, yet another little thing that I found to be funny. And this is pretty typical of Hollywood movies in general, but this whole, like, 55-year-old dude getting the 30-year-old girl thing is just like, really, Hollywood? You can't, like, I don't know who to blame for this. Like, is it the audience? Like, the audience just doesn't want to be in a movie where a girl has any age on her. Like, I was looking on my phone, going back through his last, like, 10 movies to see if his love interests were ever anywhere near his age. And they were all exactly like 33 to 35. And he's like 50 to 55 during that time span. And I don't know. Do I really give a shit? No, but I was just like, really? Like, there's nobody in his age range to play a love interest? And that's typical of movies. Almost, I was just talking about this recently with the Don't Kill It review I did. Like, Dolph Lundgren, the last few movies I've seen him in, he's always bagging some girl who's like 20-something years old. And he's almost 60. It's, come on, Hollywood. Like, anyway, all right, signing off.